Hey there, I'm Cindy Renna, and you're listening to Homeschooling Outside the Box, where I help you build a homeschool that fits your unique family. Hello, hello, and thank you so much for listening today. I am thrilled to introduce my guest. Her name is Duran. She is a physical therapist by training. She is a wife and a mother by vocation. She has been home educating using the Charlotte Mason philosophy for more than a decade. She encountered Charlotte Mason when her children were toddlers, lucky, and has immersed herself in Mason's wisdom ever since. One of those toddlers had the audacity to grow up and graduate, while the others remain at home in Maryland with Dawn and her husband. Dawn writes for The Discerning Home Educator and serves as aide de camp to Cindy Rollins, with whom she co-hosts the New Mason Jar podcast. She is the author of A Reasoned Patriotism, Critical Thinking, and Civic Duty in an Age of Polarization, and is the creator of Swedish Drill Revisited, in which she adapts the physical education method recommended by Charlotte Mason for a modern audience. Dawn works part-time for the CMEC. And Dawn, welcome to Homeschooling Outside the Box.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, I am thrilled to talk about your book, A Reasoned Patriotism, because it's America's 250th birthday. And I thought,
Woohoo!
yes, I thought we have got to have a very a fun and very patriotic episode on homeschooling outside the box in honor of America's birthday. And I thought, who can I talk to about America 250? And I was on Substack, and I just love your Substack, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I thought, you know who would be perfect is Dawn Duran. So I'm so glad that you said yes.
Oh, that makes me so happy. This is one of my very favorite topics. In reflection, I realize that it's been a thread throughout my whole life, but all the more so from homeschooling and getting to read amazing living books and falling in love with American history all over again.
Mhm.
So it's one of my favorite things to talk about. So I'm thrilled for this conversation.
Yes, and I think it might be one of your favorite things to talk about for the same reason it's one of my favorite things to talk about. We have military connections, both of us,
Yes.
right? My
Yes.
husband is a veteran. He was in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And when that happens in your life, that will really shape you. You know, that
Yes.
is talk about living history, right? I
Yeah,
mean, it's
absolutely. No,
he is the
absolutely.
living book, getting to experience it. And that just kind of changes everything. So you also have military men in your life, right?
Yes, yes. It runs actually in my family. And then when I met my husband, he had just gotten out of the army to pursue a degree, realized how much he loved the army, and decided he was going back in. So from the
Hmm.
beginning of our relationship, he is now retired after 22 years of service in the army. But my boys grew up on a military installation, and my oldest son, after graduating, joined the military himself after letting us know he was going to do so as early as the age of 10.
Wow. So he
Yeah,
just knew.
he knew.
I do think certain ones, I've got one who will be starting ROTC in college this fall.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
That's
with
exciting.
ambition to join the army afterwards. And
Okay.
yeah, same thing, he's talked about it for a long time. And I really feel like there are some people just born just set apart for that lifestyle.
I do, and thank God for them. And
Right?
it's scary as a mom and as
Sure.
a wife
Sure.
when you have one of those people in your life. But as I was compiling a scrapbook for Gabriel for his graduation, and I
Hmm.
was going through pictures from when he was younger, I came across picture after picture of him
Yeah.
saluting or in military gear of some sort. And I thought, yes, this should not have come as any
Right.
surprise to me at all. It was his
Right.
destiny.
Right. Now, was he in scouts?
No,
No.
he
Okay.
did something called we didn't have the opportunity to do Boy Scouts initially. We actually joined a group that was trying to form a Charlotte Mason type of scouts. So he
Oh,
had a short year or two experience with that, and then he shifted into Christian Service Brigade, which is um
nice.
which is a scouting type activity, but it's not Boy Scouts of America.
But it's the same type of, I mean, the same
Yeah,
vein.
yeah.
Because I'm sure you know this. I'm throwing this at you. I didn't warn you about this, but I was wondering if you would tell our audience, what does Charlotte Mason have to do with scouting?
Oh
Do you
my
know the
goodness.
story?
Charlotte Mason was a huge fan of scouting. You might be thinking of a specific story that you can feel free to tell that if I'm not going in the right direction, but there was one Charlotte Mason trained governess
That's it.
who was working for a family
Yep.
when Robert Baden-Powell comes home and she's up in a tree with one of his children. And it was incredible. If you have more details of that story to tell, I'd love to be reminded.
Oh no, just that was the inspiration for Boy
Yes,
Scouts of America to
right.
even start, had something to do with a Charlotte Mason governess. And so when we found that, so my son who wants to be in the military is an
He was
Eagle
an
Scout.
Eagle Scout.
He
Yes,
Yeah, thank you. I know it's hard
it's a
work.
big deal.
Yes. But when we found that story out, of course, I'm like, I can't contain myself. And he's probably rolling his eyes like, oh, Charlotte Mason again. Here we go.
Exactly, exactly.
They love their
Um,
education, but
right.
I
Yeah,
talk about her probably too much.
a
I try to
little
keep it,
bit. A little bit. Yeah.
but I just thought that was a really neat connection.
Yes.
And so, okay, so let's talk about this book, this fantastic book, A Reasoned Patriotism, Critical Thinking and Civic Duty in an Age of Polarization. How did this come along? You have a unique story, right? It was a collection of speeches at first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I was actually working on this as a project with my good friend Maria Bell. We had thought that we might want to do something um, towards this end. And then in terms of developing a resource or writing a book together, we hadn't really fleshed out what that would look like. And unfortunately, she had to put the project on hold because of issues with a newborn that required her to be present in the hospital and
Mm,
go through a whole long period of issues with her youngest child. And I decided I was going to move forward and continue talking about these issues using a lot of the resources that we have been gathering. And I developed a series of talks, which I initially presented at Nancy Kelly's Living Education Retreat in Minnesota. And they were well received, and it was such a passion of mine. And the cultural moment that we have found ourselves in for the past decade just seemed to lend itself to the need to speak to a reasoned patriotism, not one that's just America, rah, rah, good or bad, and not the opposite extreme, which tends to be the more common one these days, that America is rotten to the core and is terrible from the get-go, and we need to start all over. And there's a better way. And Mason spoke to that. She
mhm,
was against the idea of jingoism, the idea
mhm,
of just being devoted to your country in an unthinking manner that was blind to any of its flaws and just had this superiority complex about it. No, she talked about an instructed or a reasoned patriotism that was very measured, but she always emphasized that love of country
mhm,
is essential for the health of that country, for that society, and for civilization. Not just for, she obviously was in England, we're in America, not just our love of our own countries, but everyone should be loving their country in the same way, because only through that great love for the place that you come from, despite its faults,
mhm.
um, can you contribute to that culture thriving. And it's only when you can love your own country, when you can love your own immediate neighbor well, that you are then capable of loving someone halfway around the world
Yeah.
and really appreciating and understanding their culture as well.
Oh yeah, because how else can you empathize, right?
Right, right,
Unless you first understand what that is to love
right,
your own country.
exactly.
Yes, and I love the title. I love A Reasoned Patriotism, not falling off either side of the horse, with either the jingoism or the cynicism. And
Right.
I think we're in such a black and white phase of
Yes,
our culture where it's like, well, if I love this other country, that means I can't love my own. Or if I say I love my country, then I'm condoning all any
Right,
atrocity that ever happened in the last
right,
250 years. And that's
right.
not what we're saying. There is a middle
No.
road.
There's absolutely a middle road.
Yeah,
And because when you love your country, it doesn't mean that you whitewash it, that you
right.
mythologize it. You're fully aware of the fact, because we're all fallen human beings, that we've
Mhm.
made mistakes. But there tends to be a trend, I think, these days. There's a mindset called presentism, where people today judge the past based on modern standards, and they come at it with
Yes.
with an attitude of superiority,
Uh-huh.
which is totally lacking the biblical attitudes of humility and
Yes.
gratitude that are necessary for the health of any country.
And that, boy, I can't help thinking about literature, how that always ends up happening with literature. And
Yes,
just the hubris looking at it like, oh, well, thank goodness we're not like
like
this
that.
anymore.
I know.
And it's right, it's no different with history. And yes, so being able to look at things and not excuse them, not
Right,
say, oh, they just didn't know any better, those,
right.
poor
Because they
people
were
from the
awful.
18th century. Right.
Right.
We can still point it and say that was wrong, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that we have to disqualify America, that America's not worthy of our
Right.
love
Right.
and
Exactly.
devotion.
Because
Right.
there are plenty of people today doing great things that we
Right.
see on the surface who have flaws and who
Yes.
have sinned themselves. And you might not be seeing it. How are you going to feel 100 years from now when someone's looking back at your life and saying, "Oh, I'm
Right.
so glad I'm not like that person."
Right.
You mentioned hubris, and I think that there's a great deal of that, unfortunately, in our culture at large, and
Yeah.
really the foundation of our perspective for looking at anything should be one of humility and willingness to learn and
Mhm.
willingness to ask hard questions, but not to jump to conclusions, um, and to make sure that we explore all of the nuances of something and not just grabbing onto an extreme.
Right. And I think another issue with this is that if someone's not perfect, they're not worth reading
Worthy?
about or following.
Right,
And anytime we read biographies in our homeschool, I will always start, I'm like, two things are certain. One, the main character is going to die because it's biography, right? The end of the
right,
book, they
yeah.
die. Um, two, he will disappoint you.
Yes.
He or she at some point.
Right.
Everyone
That's
but
right. If
Jesus,
it's an
right?
honest, right,
Yes.
exactly. If it's a well-written, honest biography.
Yes, and even in Plutarch's Lives, who focus on the good story, like the overwhelming, not so much like a timeline chronologically through this guy's life,
Right.
but even looking at the highlights, you will be disappointed. And
Oh my
so
gosh.
instead of
Yeah.
being shocked when this happens,
Yeah.
or pointing out certain things that are really glaring flaws about our forefathers or whoever in American history, if we can just walk into it saying, okay, this person's going to disappoint us, like they
Right.
just are.
Right.
So then we just swallow that and let's just look at the good that he or
Right.
she did
Right.
do.
And we can learn from the negative too. We can
Right.
learn from their mistakes. And without a spirit of humility, we don't even have that lesson to take from it. It's
Right.
not all, just because it's bad doesn't mean it's completely worthless of our attention, because
Hmm.
those mistakes, those paths that they went down, have valuable lessons for us to help us navigate the future. So they're
Yes.
just as valuable.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so we brought it up earlier about Charlotte Mason being, not American,
Right.
being British. So you look at it and you're like, all right, what lessons can a Victorian British educator teach to a postmodern American culture? And we talked about humility because that really is the first step towards even hearing her out because you're thinking, well,
Right.
you don't know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
right? But what she says about patriotism is universal.
Yeah.
So can you talk on that, on how her lessons from so long ago are still very applicable and if nothing else, I mean, more needed than ever.
More needed than ever. I agree. It's amazing. The more I read Charlotte Mason, and I've been reading her work since I first dove in when my youngest was a year and a half, and he's about to turn 16. And I've just been reading
Uh,
them over and over and over again. And the more I read them, the more I see how applicable they are to
mhm,
modern day because of the broad universal principles that and their solid basis in
mhm.
biblical Christianity and her understanding of humanity.
Yeah,
Even if one of her books, one of her volumes is called Ourselves, Our Souls and Bodies, and that's essentially a roadmap to human nature.
yeah,
And she addresses a lot of these topics related to patriotism specifically in that book. One aspect of citizenship in general,
mhm,
which drives me a little bit crazy in modern culture, is
yeah,
people talking about their rights. Yeah,
yes,
it's such an amazing thing that we live in a culture, in a country that in which we have so many rights and so many freedoms, but we have an equal amount of responsibility
yeah.
and duty. And a
No one
nation,
likes to talk about that side.
no one likes to talk about that side, but a nation cannot survive,
Yeah,
much less thrive, without us recognizing that. And Charlotte Mason lived at a time when it was much more commonly recognized that
yeah,
we do have a duty and a responsibility as citizens of a nation. And so just that alone, reading her talk about some of those things rather than focusing fairly selfishly, not surprisingly, just due to the trajectory of culture and more
sure.
of people having more of an inward focus as opposed to um,
Hmm.
a biblical worldview. So one of the things that she speaks to in this in I think I can't remember, I think it might be towards the philosophy of education. She talks about how it is important. She also emphasized the importance of knowing about other cultures and
Yeah,
about spreading outside of her borders. But she said, you can't do that, which is also something we touched on earlier. You can't spread out of your borders until you have appreciated what's within your own
yeah,
and really learn about your family, meaning your um, English family in her case, your American family in our case. Only then can you develop this appreciation and understanding and love of people
yeah,
in other cultures. And she warns against the person um, who would say that they have no allegiance to their own country. She
yeah,
said, that is a
yeah.
person to be afraid of. That person without loyalty is
Hmm.
someone, they're bragging about this, that they have no ties. That is not a good thing.
Right.
We live in a culture nowadays where the idea of being a global citizen
Yeah,
in a world with no borders for nations is lauded as the highest possible good, when in actuality, when you have that mindset and you have no localized loyalty or love, you're trotting around without a foundation. You're on sand as opposed to solid rock.
yes.
So that's
Yes. And that's a very wouldn't you say that's a very utopian kind of
yes,
idea? Because our citizen, for Christians, our citizenship is in heaven.
he's in heaven.
And that is not what we're saying.
Right.
That is true, but the
Yes.
Lord also puts you in a certain country.
In a certain time and place. Okay, one of the
Yes.
things that I have in my book that I really appreciate, this quote by the founder of First Things, Richard Newhouse, I think is
Okay.
his name, but he caused a controversy almost 20 years ago when he said when he gets to heaven, he fully expects to be seen by God as an American, not
Yeah.
just as someone created in the image of God, but
Right.
as an American. And he wasn't saying that because he was coming from the best place on earth and America is going to be at the
Sure.
forefront. And he
Yeah.
said that it was an acknowledgement that God put him at a
Yes.
particular place at a particular time for a particular purpose. And rather
Yeah.
than rejecting that, we should embrace it. And
Yes.
because there's so much to love and appreciate. And I think that we tend to focus on the negatives because
Hmm.
of what you just said, of the utopian mindset, which we will never. Utopia literally means
Yes.
nowhere.
Yes.
Literally means nowhere. I mean, my sons and I were blown away when we read through this last year, and they were like, this means what? And this is what
Yeah.
people claim as anyway. It's when you really know what you what it is, it's pretty eye-opening.
Exactly, exactly. And I love talking about you have to love your country before you love others. Didn't Charlotte Mason taught foreign language in that
Yeah.
lens, saying that was a
Yes,
way to be a good neighbor. But that is like
exactly.
saying, oh, you don't have to learn English, just learn
Right.
French, you know, and
Right.
that would have been ludicrous. You
Right.
assume that they know English before they're going to learn French. And it's the same
Exactly.
with America. You love your own so that you can love
Right.
others.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, so how do we teach citizenship? Like, when do we start? I know if for people who might use Ambleside, there's, that's kind of its own vein. Your book is a fabulous resource on ideas, but how would you say you as a homeschool mom, how did you teach citizenship in the younger years? Did it change as they got older?
So, so citizenship in as Charlotte Mason taught it, it really wasn't pulled out as a separate subject because it was so tied in. There
Hmm.
were things that she used towards citizenship, which later morphed into something she called everyday morals.
Okay.
So it wasn't merely teaching people about how their government worked and
Hmm.
how that was structured. They certainly learned those things in an age appropriate fashion, but it was really more about um, just civic duty and civic responsibility in general. And that was connected with things like history and literature and geography. And so it was woven in rather than pulled out as a separate 20-minute lesson twice a week that we're going to
Right.
get points. It was just something that organically arose through those things. But so I would say that's the way we approached it in our homeschool,
Hmm.
just by giving them a solid foundation of American history, as they were able to understand it, introduce them to the basics of government, and then we expanded upon that every year. And then they, in high school, were immersed in current events as a
Hmm.
means of as one element of their citizenship studies. But there were particular things that Mason did assign as part of these citizenship studies. You touched on one of them already, and it was Plutarch's Lives,
Yeah.
which she integrated with students as young as 10 years old, 9 or 10 years old, and then they continued the study up into the high school years. But it was lessons in human nature and
Right.
leadership and examples of how not to lead,
Yeah.
and really helping people understand that good and evil are concrete, real categories that
Yes.
exist, and helping them learn to identify that.
Yeah, and it's less about indoctrinating, like I'm going to
Yes,
make you this American, than you nailed it about just being a decent citizen means being a
right,
decent human being.
right.
Where I co-run a homeschool group, and we have a citizenship time where we meet, and the littlest of the littles are read a fairy tale.
Oh,
And then the next step up, we do a tall tale and an American hero, and then kind of compare them. And then the big kids do Plutarch. But we found that thread. We were like, you really, if you don't understand fairy tales and just basic right and wrong, good
right,
and evil, and that
right.
yes, those are actually two things. Like that
Yes,
line keeps getting blurrier and blurrier.
it is.
That's really so it makes sense that Charlotte Mason would end up calling it, and I've not heard that before. What did you say? A moral,
Everyday morals,
everyday
everyday
morals.
morals. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so what are some things? Okay, decent human being, got it. That's, uh but then what are some things that you think every high school graduate should know? Every American high school graduate should know.
I do think that it is incredibly important that all high school students have a thorough understanding about the way our government works,
Hmm.
and that they should understand that we don't live in a democracy. We live in a democratic republic,
Uh-huh.
and it is a representative democracy, but it is a very different thing than a pure democracy, which is what what is being promoted when people and politicians in particular throw out that term. But
Hmm.
our government, I just studied the Federalist Papers and and the Constitution with a group of high schoolers who met in my home weekly over the past school year.
Yeah.
And as we studied the Federalist Papers, it I was blown away by how the founders who developed our Constitution were so intentional, so
Mhm.
thoughtful, so cognizant of
Yeah.
the fallen nature of man and the
Yes.
need to have safeguards in place to prevent um,
Mhm.
one person from being dominant and turning us. There's lots of accusations of us being in a fascist dictatorship and autocracy, but the reality of it is, when you look at what that is,
Yeah.
we're not, because of the way our government was designed. And it is remarkable. And one other
Hmm.
thing that struck me in reading the Federalist Papers, one thing that we as citizens of either political party will get frustrated with when our party is in power is that nothing gets accomplished. Do
Uh-huh.
you know what? That's by design, because things are only supposed to happen when 60 to 70% of the population think that that's the right thing to do. We're not in that place. We're in
Yeah.
a 50-50 place. So the things that happen are the ones that really have
Yeah.
support among most Americans. That's an incredible
That
thing.
is.
And so studying the Constitution so that you understand
Yeah.
what it contains, studying the Federalist Papers, which explains why the Constitution was designed that way,
Hmm.
knowing that our founding fathers had this deep understanding of the Roman Republic, the
Hmm.
Athenian democracy, and these forms of government, and they were so aware of the benefits and the faults, and that they designed something completely unique that had never been tried in human history. And here we are, 250 years later,
Yeah.
the longest lasting active constitution in human history.
That's
That blew me
amazing.
away, because, do you know, England is older than us. So I thought,
Right.
well, how can that be? They
Yeah.
don't have a written constitution. It's an oral constitution that adapts and changes. So ours is really the longest living one. It's remarkable.
That isn't, you're right. And all people can see is the problems that are happening today to
Yes,
them in their
right,
state, in their city.
right,
Um,
right.
right. You've got to zoom out. You've got to
Yes,
zoom out and see what a big deal we are. Like, what a big, I mean, just
it is.
that we still exist, even, and that
Exactly.
we exist peacefully. And that's incredible. Yeah, I agree. Original documents for
Yes,
sure.
yes,
How our government works. History is a huge one. I think you're probably, I don't know if you're about my age. Do you remember Jay Leno when he would go around to people and ask them?
yes. Man on the street questions.
Yes. And
Yes,
nobody knew, and it was always so mortifying. And I'm like, oh my goodness. My kid, not that Jay Leno is ever going to come and ask us questions, but like, you want to
there
be
are people doing that
ready.
now, though. You do,
Yes.
it's embarrassing when you see their answers. It's ridiculous.
Yes, yes. And so, um, for us, the easiest way to kind of tick the boxes was to go over the, oh my goodness, I'm losing the name of what it's called, the naturalization test.
Yes,
How I'm
same
like,
with us.
if
Yes,
somebody has to pass this to be a member of our country, like you
right.
should have to pass it to be
Absolutely.
able to vote and to
Absolutely.
live here,
It's embarrassing that
Yeah,
a naturalized citizen would know this information that we don't.
right.
It's very simple. It's like 110 questions and
Yeah,
answers. And it's an excellent. We did that for years, going over that like once a week during our morning time together. And thought that that was incredibly valuable. I think I got that from Cindy Rollins, actually, and I thought, oh,
yeah.
that's a great idea. I'm going to start doing that.
Yes, it's a good kind of checklist. But I do think, yeah, okay. So original documents, history, a little government, and those we would say are all reasonable things that a high school graduate should know.
Absolutely. And they can be, it's something you can take one book for each of those types of things and spread it out over all of high school. It's not like
Hmm.
you shouldn't even try to cram it into one term or one year.
Right.
Something that they should be exposed to little by little, bit by bit,
Yeah.
over the course of their high school, while simultaneously being immersed, especially in the high school years, in current events. And
Yes.
for me, as a citizenship, not just a government, as a an aspect of citizenship, it's really important, was really important for me in our homeschool, that my children are aware that everything that you read has a bias.
Yes.
Everything is
Yes.
biased. Whether or not the person owns up to the bias and is
Hmm.
honest about it is really important, because while many of the news sources I would be drawn to myself are conservative in nature, they're upfront about being conservative from the beginning.
Right.
Whereas there are many sources that claim to be neutral, and they are not. So
Mhm.
your child being able to help them get a sense of bias, helping them read side by side about the same current event
Hmm.
written from two different perspectives, the right and the left, and even better if you can find one in the center. One resource I love for this is a website called All Sides, and
Okay.
it sends out a newsletter every day, maybe 5 stories, and it'll link you to a story about that topic from the right, from the left, and from the center. They
Wow.
even have something on their website called the media bias meter, where they kind of they've categorized things for
Hmm.
you, constantly updating it because they're asking for feedback from other people because they don't want to label something incorrectly if it's not, and just teaching our kids the difference between opinion and commentary versus factual presentation. I think that that's a really important part of citizenship.
Yes, which is so hard
Yes,
nowadays.
it is.
Everything comes through the same filter as truth, and it's not. Um,
Right,
and how you're talking about current events reminds me of how Charlotte Mason taught us to study history, right? You don't just read one perspective
right,
about, we don't just need, the Jewish story from World
right,
War II, right? We need the
right,
German and the French
right.
and the
Yes,
American and England, and the more you read, the more you can form a cohesive and balanced opinion about it.
yes, absolutely. And one thing I like to tell people too, when you're reading those different perspectives, whether it's the German versus the Jewish versus the Japanese versus the American perspective, what is the truth in all of that, right?
Hmm.
What is the opinion? What is the propaganda? What is the truth? The truth are the things that are common in both.
Right.
The things that are represented and discussed in both, those are the things you can distill out as factual, and then
Yeah.
you can figure out like your opinion about things from there.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. So good. And such a good this is where Charlotte Mason, education is a life. You're not just
Right.
ingesting this real quick so you're not embarrassed by Jay Leno, right? You're being shaped as a human, and all these things are going to carry them out into their adult life. And when
Right.
they are, if they're on social media, the internet, like all these different things are going to be flying at them, they will be able to decipher
Yes.
and be able to form an opinion that's well-rounded.
Right. And that's what I
Hopefully,
think
that's
is
the
our
prayer.
responsibility. Right. That's what I think is our responsibility as parents, to help them get to that place. We're
Yes.
not to, Charlotte Mason tells us we're not supposed to make little partisans of our children. They
Right.
should not have our same political opinion. If they have an opinion, it should definitely shouldn't be we want to make sure it's not a mirror, a reflection
Right.
of ours. We
Right.
want them to think through their own.
Yes, and just being upfront about the bias, and that they aren't sheep led to the slaughter, like that they are aware of
Mhm.
things people are going to try to trick them.
Right.
Um yeah,
Right. They're
because
going to leave out important nuanced details to get them to be baited with clickbait to
hmm
the sensational idea. It's so important.
hmm
Ideas have consequences. We've all heard
yep.
that, right? So it's really important to not just look at a headline, but to try to find the underlying idea in that and to see if it's
Yes.
supported properly, and to take that idea to its natural conclusion and see where it takes them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, in your book, I love how it's divided. It's very much if you guys listening have read Honey for a Child's Heart or Cindy
Mm.
Rollins' Morning Time, it's very similar in that the first chunk of it is philosophy and ideas, right? And then
Yep.
the second chunk of it is suggestions, and it's an appendix like full of resources. I just love this. And there are even anything you could think of, songs, poems, art, composers to study and places to go, landmarks. And so it's really a fabulous resource that you can use once you go through the beginning and
Oh,
ingest, you
thank
get the
you.
full spectrum of the philosophy. So I really love that.
Thank
Um,
you.
and then your Substack. Let's talk about that because that's
Okay.
kind of a little like a bite-sized version of the
Yes.
book.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was born out of, so you one thing that we haven't mentioned yet, this is a good segue here, about forming citizenship is presenting our children, our students, with all that is lovely about our nation
Yes.
in terms of the
Yes.
things that it has to offer in terms of art and music, whether that be a little ditty, a folk song, a composer, um, poetry,
Yeah.
all of these things, and great authors that are from American or speak to American themes in particular, exposing them to these things help them to develop a healthy pride because they
Yeah.
see these things of excellence that were developed by their fellow countrymen, and it
Yeah.
instills in them a pride, and it helps them to rally around the things we have in common at a time
Right.
where there's so much emphasis on our differences.
Yes, and it helps them form an American
Yeah,
identity,
identity. Exactly.
which is so crucial. That is where patriotism comes from. It's
Right.
having that camaraderie. I'm looking up a title to this Thanksgiving book that I love. I wonder if you've heard of it. I feel like this, she talks about this in the book
Melanie
that,
Kirkpatrick.
yes, you know it.
I
I swear,
do. It's excellent, but I don't remember the name either.
what's
It's
it
a
called?
great book.
Thanksgiving. But she talks about how she has all these uh immigrants from different countries, right? And like what is the thing that ties them together and how it just never hit me until I read it. I was like, wow, Thanksgiving and of course 4th of July, Independence Day are like the quintessential American. There's no division. You can't like
Right.
we can't, I mean, I'm sure we
Well,
can
you
find
can.
we can find a way to fight about everything. But those are the things that are really distinctly American. And when you think about creating so even in our own families, right? We all have a family culture, right?
Yeah.
We all have an identity. This is how Renas act. This is a Rena thing to
Yeah.
do, right? And we're building that as our children are growing. And it's
Right.
been the same thing for America. And that includes, I think like what is the soundtrack of our home? Like what songs did my
Mhm.
family, do I still listen to that I grew up listening to?
Yeah.
That is what we're talking about here with
Right.
having an American identity. And you're right, there's so much good. And we have studied people from all over the world, read literature from all over the world, and there is something so sweet about American artists and poets and all that
Yeah.
because the experience is more similar. And
Right.
so, yes, so in Substack, can you talk about how you highlight what, break it down how
Yeah.
you go through and what, because you offer such a great overview. It's just so full of resources on
Aw.
how we can implement this in our homeschool, but also just the things, you talk about Charlotte Mason, the feast, what we can offer to our children. There is so much to offer in
Right.
American culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing that inspired me to this is we started thinking about, so we talk about America 250, and I think the big focus has really been this year, but it really
Hmm.
started last 4th of July, leading
Yeah.
up to
Yeah.
this 4th of July. And so as I was reflecting on this, and I love the historian Wilfred McClay. He
Okay.
wrote the book Land of Hope, An Introduction to the Great American Story. And this man is has so much humility, so much gratitude, so much great insight, and presents the story of America in a way that doesn't merely mythologize it, but
Hmm.
acknowledges the hard bits while focusing on there's this all of this greatness, right? Well,
Yeah.
Cindy Collins and I were interviewing him for the new Mason jar, and something he said stuck to me. He was on an America 250 committee with a
Uh-huh.
coworker who was pushing in the direction like we need to be more negative about the celebration. We need to point out these flaws. And Wilfred McClay said, listen, on your daughter's 13th birthday,
You're right.
Did you point out to her all of the areas she can grow in, all of the sins of her past and everything she did wrong? No,
Birthday
you
party's a great time.
celebrate.
Right.
Right, right, exactly.
To
So, so,
criticize. Yeah.
yeah, and to begin with, the 13th birthday, none of that.
Never. Yeah. Wow.
But but
Wow.
but anyway, it really
Right.
that's why it made me think like
Yes.
this is the time when we should celebrate all that's good and great,
Hmm.
put things aside for now. It's not that we're ignoring them, but
Hmm.
let's focus on all the good. And so I thought we have so many great artists and poets
Yeah.
and composers and writers. We need to highlight these. And so actually the idea came to me. It was either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. And so January 1st is right around the corner when I want to start this series. So
Perfect.
I was inspired. I fleshed out the entire year in like 2 or 3 hours
Oh,
on Christmas
love
Day,
it.
I think it
Love it.
was. And I brainstormed it and I thought, why don't I know that a lot of Charlotte Mason educators in particular, they like
Hmm.
to include many of these elements, picture study, composer study,
Yeah.
singing hymns, singing folk songs. They
Right.
like to integrate that into their morning time or a school together time, whatever you would call it in your home before the kids go off and do their separate lessons. Why don't I create something that would allow them to do an American focused picture study, poetry reading, things of that nature. So
Yes.
from that, I decided I was going to choose one artist every month and focus on some of his key elements, his or her, no, it's been his key elements of art. And then the next section is America in Song, where I focus on a composer and some of his key, best known
Hmm.
pieces, and then also integrate songs from my childhood for when I'm doing folk songs like Yankee Doodle or You're a Grand Old Flag or
Yeah.
Camptown Races, all of these songs that we remember from when we were younger, but
Yeah.
have, unless you're a Charlotte Mason homeschooler, really have
Yeah.
fallen out of practice. And then in the spirit of it being a birthday year and wanting to celebrate America, I highlight a couple of poems every month by American poets
Hmm.
that celebrate America. And then I also include links to poems by American poets that are just great just because I want to highlight the American poets that aren't
Sure.
necessarily about America. Um, and then I have a section like we started off here talking about America's military. That's an important element of our identity as
Yeah.
Americans. So I feature a march by John Philip Sousa, a Marines,
Uh-huh.
not a former Marine, only a former Marine because he's no longer with us. I know once
Right.
a Marine,
Once a
always.
Marine, always a Marine. Yes.
So I include one of his marches because I have a fond memory. When I was in fifth grade, I was in marching band, and the
Uh-huh.
first song that we did was "Washington Post" by John Philip Sousa. So Sousa is
Oh,
like backtrack of
right.
my mind anytime I think of a parade. And so
Yeah.
in addition to featuring one of his marches every month, I feature a military anthem because each branch of the military has its own anthem.
Yeah.
It has lyrics. They are meaningful, and it will
Hmm.
be great for us. It might feel, I don't know about you, but because we have lived on a military installation the past almost
Hmm.
12 years, it seems like that's what everyone in our immediate circle does, but that's not the case. Really, serving in
Right.
the military is a small percentage
Yeah.
in terms of the citizenry overall, and it would just behoove people who are not in the military
Yeah.
to become familiar, to familiarize themselves with the culture and mission of each individual branch. And then,
Yes.
yeah,
Oh
and
wait,
so
I'm
then,
sorry. I was going to jump
oh,
in.
go ahead.
That's why I love Veterans Day parades. And
Yes.
things like Boys State. My son went to Boys State and that's
Uh-huh.
in every single state. Where they have each branch stand, they play the anthem and have any veteran, which my husband always hates this part, and we have to like,
Yeah.
yeah, nudge him. We're like, get up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, that's another aspect of humility in our veterans, right?
yes,
They don't think that they don't want this attention. They served because it was
exactly.
not to get attention. It was because they felt a calling to serve.
Exactly. And if you ever want to make my husband feel extremely uncomfortable, thank him for his service. He
Yeah,
never knows what to, he's like,
right,
but right, because they don't think, right, they're like, it's our duty. Like someone
right.
needs to go, and I chose
Exactly.
to go. But I love the veterans parades where you can hear each branch, that it is a distinct anthem, it is a different, but they're all together, it's still united.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to jump
No,
in
no,
there.
that's okay. One
Yeah.
that reminds me of one of the favorite things because we live near Washington, D.C. We have a lot of honor flights coming through our area.
Hmm.
World War II veterans, now Korean War and Vietnam veterans who are flown in from all over the country to come to D.C. to see their memorials
Oh,
for their war.
wow.
I have goosebumps right now. It's such a
That's
special thing
incredible.
to be
Yeah.
able to see these groups. And a couple of times our sons have gone to the airport to either receive or say goodbye to them as they're getting on their flights. And these, so yes,
So
the
great.
veterans of maybe our husband's ages, they don't like to be the center of attention, but these veterans who are
Right.
in 80s, some of them, 90s, some of them,
Yes.
they're so filled with pride. And to demonstrate your
Yeah.
gratitude and enthusiasm about the way that they've served, and to let them know that they mattered, that they made a difference, is
Yeah.
perhaps the biggest thing you could ever do. Just ask a veteran a story, an older veteran a story,
Right.
to show your love. They are going to be so thrilled that someone is interested, and it makes a big difference to them to be able for their history to live on.
Right.
Um,
And they've probably reached the age where they realize it's good for the kids to
yes,
do that. It's not even so
right,
much about that. Right. It's a healthy thing to have your kids thank a veteran or ask a
right,
story or be
exactly,
present at a parade or just to care.
right,
Up,
exactly.
even if
Because
they're not going to be active duty, like they could still
right,
care about the military and
right, because
recognize, yeah,
yes, because that also shows a healthy love of your country,
yes,
and I think is inspiring to these men who are concerned that that might be dying, and so
right,
that can be a great encouragement to them. Um,
yeah,
Back to the Substack, what I've been featuring, because I know you and I
mm-hmm.
talk about this that part forever.
Right,
But the next section that I thought I would highlight is a section dealing with America's folk heroes and
mm-hmm.
legends. And it's not even legends at this point. Initially, I didn't come up with I really threw in some things in there like Storm Along and things that
Yeah,
you talk in American Tall Tales that you
yeah,
referenced earlier. But these really are real people. Like for the month of June, we're focusing on Harriet Tubman.
mm-hmm.
And just like our founding fathers, these people that are listed in America's folk heroes, Davy Crockett was another one. Um, they've been mythologized a little bit,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's okay.
yes,
That's okay because they did great things, and we want
right,
to honor and elevate them. And they are part of the American story that we want our children to know about, so they can
yeah,
have them as heroes and heroines in the case of Harriet Tubman, and have
yeah,
great pride and interest
yeah,
in what they did. So my
yeah.
friend Jeanette Toulis has been helping me come up with a list of picture books and chapter books for that section. And I'm so thankful for her for that guidance. And then I finish with uniquely American holidays, which we've already talked about.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we just celebrated Flag Day here,
Yeah,
which is a lesser known holiday. It shares a birthday with the Army. In
mm-hmm.
fact, the Army birthday is the same as Flag Day. We're coming up on Juneteenth, which is a newly um, created holiday, but a uniquely American holiday all the same, regardless if it's only been celebrated formally and officially for a few years. And then I
Right.
end with an American history parade of some key events that have happened on every day of the month for the month that's being featured.
That's so incredible. And I consider myself a pretty big history buff. I'm a military white, right? And I've learned so much from re
Oh,
so even if you think, oh, I know a lot about, you don't know everything, you should still, I mean, you can always learn something.
we're always learning, right? That's when you're green, you're growing, and when you're
Exactly.
rotten, you're rotten.
I like it. I like it. Okay, so do you have any favorite American songs or trips or artists that are just super special to you?
You know what? An artist that I discovered in the past 10 years is Henry Osawa Tanner.
Oh,
He
yes,
is,
he's new to me too. And
I know.
did you read Russ Ramsey's book?
No, I
No.
haven't.
Okay,
No,
that's
no,
how I
no.
found out about him.
No,
So I
I
love
didn't know anything about the man behind the art until I don't even know who exposed me to his artwork about 10 years ago. And I just immediately fell in love.
I
And I
did
thought
too.
that this was
Yeah.
an incredible artist on so many different themes.
Hmm.
Has a wonderful collection of biblical biblically
Yeah.
themed pieces of art too that I've really come to love. And I love Mary Cassatt, just
Yes.
depiction of motherhood. That's so
Hmm.
special. Um, I love all the patriotic songs. I love, in particular, um, Battle Hymn of the Republic is one of my
Hmm.
favorites.
Hmm.
I always loved that one. And American authors, I was kind of going through this today, and I thought, you know what? A great American author that I love is Beverly Cleary. There is no one who knows the mind of a 4 or 5 year old child like Beverly Cleary, and
Very
she was
true.
a national treasure.
Yes.
So she's actually one of my favorite American authors.
I love it. Yeah, and it can be modern. I mean, when you're celebrating America, you don't have to stay in the
Yeah,
1800s.
right,
You're allowed to.
exactly.
Right. Okay. Do you have any family traditions for 4th of July? How do you guys celebrate Independence Day?
Okay, we again, because we are uniquely situated near Washington, D.C., and are
Yes.
surrounded by an abundance of historical sites. Ever since we moved here, first year starting in 2015, we pick a historical site to visit on 4th of July. I
Oh,
remember
that's
very
great.
clearly that first one, we went to Fort McHenry, which is
Mhm.
unique in that it's considered not only a National Historical Monument, but a historical shrine. And
Wow.
they had a reenactor of Frederick Douglass there that day. They had this incredible flag raising ceremony, which is such a spectacular thing because it was happening during the War of 1812 when we remember our original flag had 13 stars and 13 stripes.
Hmm.
At, at that time, when they were adding a state, they were adding a stripe and a star.
Oh boy.
So during the War of 1812, there were 15 stars and 15 stripes, and the flag was humongous. It's like a 36 by 48-foot flag that is waving over Fort McHenry. And when you go to the fort, if there's a large enough crowd, the crowd participates in unfurling that flag and exchanging it for the small flag that they keep flying overnight in case
Oh,
bad weather comes that would
sure.
destroy and pull down the flagpole for the large flag. So that was a really special one. We've done lots of places in DC proper. We've been to Fort Washington. We've been to daytime fireworks at Mount Vernon. Just so many special memories.
That is
What about you
wonderful.
guys? Do you have a special 4th of July tradition?
So since we are from Michigan, we love the idea of a 4th of July party. What we refuse to factor in is that we live in North Alabama. It's about
So
a
those
hundred degrees
picnics,
here.
right, right.
It is miserably hot, but we just can't stand it. We're like, I don't care. We still so it actually start my daughter and our neighbor, Miss Rebecca, who's really more of like a surrogate grandma. So sweet. We've got a park behind our house, so it's like an inverse cul-de-sac kind of like all the backs
Okay.
of the houses face
Oh,
the park.
neat.
And so we gather there with neighbors and
Oh,
friends, and we have the kids will usually do a little reading. So like one kid will read a little bit of the Declaration.
right.
One kid will read John Adams' great quote about fireworks.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
In his letter
Um,
to Abigail, yes.
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 Yep. They'll read that. And then I feel like I'm missing one, but just if there's another quote or something that they feel pulled to do. And
Right.
then my husband will pray over our country and leaders and
Oh.
all that. And then we fight the flies for our food and we sweat to death. And then finally it gets dark and we do sparklers. And then there's actually a big fireworks show that we can walk to because we live right by a area that hosts a fireworks show. So we get to
Oh,
just walk or drive the golf cart. We're kind of spoiled.
that's
Um,
delightful. What an awesome
it is, but we're
tradition.
we're miserably hot. I'm talking like dripping, like everyone has lost 10 pounds by the end of the night. And then we go nowhere and do nothing for like a week because we're just
But
all
the
in
thing,
recovery mode.
that's right, but you do it, and you do it because
Yes.
it's a special day. It's a
Well, and that's
special
yeah.
celebration.
And we talk about the guys in the convention and we're like they had the windows
That's
shut in
right.
Philadelphia. Like it was brutally hot. We think we're hot, they were in
Right.
wool and all. So
Yeah.
we have there's lots
Great
of
conversations
conversation
about that. Yeah.
opportunities. Yeah, so that's what we like to do too.
I love it.
But all right, Tom, well, I'm a huge fan of poetry, just like you are. And so I thought you could help us end the episode by reading us one of your favorite American poems.
I would love to. I'm going to read America for Me by Henry Van Dyke. 'Tis fine to see the old world and travel up and down among the famous palaces and cities of renown, to admire the crumbly castles and the statues and kings. But now I think I've had enough of antiquated things. So it's home again, America for me. My heart is turning home again, and there I long to be, in the land of youth and freedom beyond the ocean bars, where the air is full of sunlight and the flag is full of stars. Oh, London is a man's town, there's power in the air. And Paris is a woman's town, with flowers in her hair. And it's sweet to dream in Venice, and it's great to study Rome. But when it comes to living, there is no place like home. I like the German fir woods and green battalions drilled. I like the gardens of Versailles with flashing fountains filled. But oh, to take your hand, my dear, and ramble for a day in the friendly western woodland where nature has her sway. I know that Europe's wonderful, yet something seems to lack. The past is too much with her, and the people looking back. But the glory of the present is to make the future free. We love our land for what she is and what she is to be. Oh, it's home again and home again, America for me. I want a ship that's westward bound to plow the rolling sea, to the blessed land of room enough beyond the ocean bars, where the air is full of sunlight and the flag is full of stars.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. I just love that poem so much.
I love it too. I was so tickled to should we say it? I'm gonna say it. You
Say
didn't ask me to finish with a poem until this morning, and you asked me to finish with a poem. I was looking and I came across America for Me. Then you sent me an email saying you were inspired by reading America for Me this morning, and I thought that's a sign. That's the poem we have to read.
absolutely. It was the coolest thing. And you're such a good sport because I did. I know you're not no pressure, but can you do this?
No worries. No worries at all. It's been so fun to talk to you. Thank you for this opportunity. I loved it.
Absolutely. I had a great talk with you as well. Dawn, how can people find you online?
Oh, goodness. I'm not online many places, but I guess you can find me at The Discerning Home Educator
Yes,
on Substack. And I also am on The New Mason Jar with Cindy Rollins, so you can find me there.
perfect. I encourage everybody to reach out and keep up with Dawn. She's fantastic. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Cindy.